Welcome everybody to the Dynasty Stock Market with bigz and Beery. He is Beery. I am bigz. How you doing, Emerson?
Living the dream, my friend. Ready to talk some fantasy football today. I have a day off, so been
Woo,
taking it easy. Hit the gym
nice.
now. Yeah, gearing it up. We already set the fantasy football draft date for the home league. So
Mhm.
like I said, we're close to fantasy football season. I can tell.
Mine is coming up on Saturday. Let me hit this intro, and we'll talk about it on the other side. That's a good show topic I didn't think of. Yeah, we'll talk about it in a second. Here we go. All right, everybody, we're back with the Dynasty Stock Market on Player Profiler News, and we are streaming live on the Player Profiler _NFL at on Twitter. So I'm glad that you're all with us. Go ahead and throw some comments down. We'll get to those as the show rolls along, and maybe if you ask some questions, we'll get to a Q&A segment at the end. I got a book. Once we're done, I'm guesting with Jack Lucenay in a little bit. We're going to talk about some crazy things, like if you want to know what would happen if everyone in the world farted at the same time, watch Jack Lucenay's show.
That sounds like something that would be up his alley. Yeah, he's a wild guy.
Right? Canadian, one of those other Canadians. All right, so today we got stock watch, we got market trends, we got trade strategies to discuss, and players spotlights. I think what would be a good idea for the trade strategies, since it's kind of an open discussion, we should talk about some draft trades strategies with draft trades.
Okay,
So when
I like
is
that.
your home league draft?
It is in September 1st, so about a month away, or over a month away still. They're more casual. A lot of casuals in this league. This is one of their one or two leagues that they play in. So going close to the season, they don't like to have the injury bug bite them like some
Right.
of us fanatics do, or we don't care at least about.
Same. My home league's the same. It's a 10-team single quarterback dynasty league. We're going into year 4, I think. It's a bunch of people that we used to either work with at the same grocery store or knew from the bar that we that we frequented. And we have our draft on Saturday. So it's our rookie draft, and I have the 102 and the 103, the 109, and 7 other picks throughout the 5 rounds. So I'm getting ready to absolutely smash this thing.
Yeah, you know what? You can see at least you got your friends to play Dynasty. I'm not even talking Dynasty. It's just a redraft league. I got my Dynasty leagues in already, luckily though.
What's up, Jamie? So my plan at this point, I changed the name of my team every season. Last year I was rookies and scream because I had so many rookies. See, I made the mistake. I did what a lot of people do when they're looking at Dynasty, and I went for youth over experience. And I've learned along the way that there's nothing wrong with winning in year 1. And maybe I should have done that. Because now the team that won in year 1, their team is falling apart. And there are some of us who are building a dynasty. And that's the whole point of it. So I wound up offloading a bunch of stuff. I'm so stacked with young wide receivers that are second, third year wide receivers. And so last year I was rookies and scream. This year I changed my name to Bro League Baubers, because that's who I'm taking with the 2 and the 3. You might quibble about the Bowers pick, but it is a single quarterback league. If it was a super flex league, I would definitely be taking Malik and Jaden Daniels. But I think I'm going to want to bank on the youth of Bowers and his ultimate profile. But it should be a really good time. It's always fun to have a live draft, and that's what makes the home league so great. Even if the competition isn't, it's not like going up against one of my drafts that I got Kluge. I was in a Kluge league last year. I got one league this year with Jeff Bell, and a bunch of like big names in the industry. This isn't like that. It's dudes I knew from the grocery store, but they still put their work in, and it's still competitive. So all right, let's get to the stock watch. We got a couple players to talk about, and that'll be pretty interesting. I got a little not talking about Michael Pittman and Jaden Daniels. That was last week, and that's just the intro video now. So today we're talking about two guys. I'm going to let you go first. And who are you watching their stock price?
I'm looking at Rashee Rice right now. I'm a Kansas City Chief fan, so I like to bring up my Chiefs. I had to double check. Still the wide receiver 31 in ADP, according to the Great Player Profiler website that allows you to track underdog, sleeper. I track sleeper dynasty ADP. Still the wide receiver 31. He's behind, around guys like a Xavier Worthy, Terry McLaurin. And that is just still really hard to believe considering the positive news that we've been getting lately. Well, relatively speaking, that Rashee Rice has had a trouble offseason. There's no doubt about that. However, we know that the NFL legal system works. It works extremely slow. I expect Rashee Rice to not be facing a suspension this season. His court date is currently set for December 9th. We know how that stuff typically works out. It's probably going to get postponed again, probably till the end of the season. Now, Rashee Rice is eventually looking at a 3 to 5 game, I would guess, suspension at some point, probably coming in 2025. But he's still sitting as the wide receiver 31. I looked at another website. I looked at Fantasy Pros. They have him as the wide receiver 28. This was a guy who was approaching wide receiver 1 territory at the end of last season as Mahomes' number 1 option potentially. And it was getting a little rich for my blood. Rashee Rice had a lot of manufactured targets last season. Number 99 in average depth of target last year. A lot of stuff close to the line of scrimmage. I described him as kind of a Deebo Samuel light. I don't think he's as good as Deebo Samuel, but dynamic with the ball in his hands. Not a particularly advanced route runner, though. It was getting pricey for me, but this is a bargain deal. We're getting word Xavier Worthy has missed 3 practices in a row today. Rashee Rice is going to be a strong factor, just like he was at the end of last season. And yeah, I think he's a great value right now. And I still can't believe that his stock is so low.
I agree. The only reason that I hedge on Rashee Rice at all is because of the presence of Hollywood Brown at this point. Xavier Worthy doesn't bother me at all. And I did take advantage of the dip as soon as he got in trouble for his accident. I went ahead and accepted some trades, people trying to offload him and stuff. Got him for a pretty good deal in a couple different leagues. And I love his upside, and I think that he's going to absolutely smash as your first flex option if you're in a 2 wide receiver league. Or wide receiver 3 if you're in a 3 wide receiver league. He's definitely somebody who's going to outplay his ADP right now, just because of the peripheral information that we have out there. And we did read this last week that it's not likely anything's going to happen as far as the suspension this year. So I really like the value on him. In other Chiefs rising stock news, Deneric Prince, everybody. He was a flag plan of mine last year. I have him in so many leagues, and I kept him on the taxi squad. And looks like if anything happens to Isaiah Pacheco, it's not Clyde Edwards-Helaire like people have been drafting in all the charity events this summer. It's going to be Deneric Prince, who I've just been holding in my stash.
Your boy's got a chance. I don't know if it's set in stone yet, but he's got a chance. I picked him up in all waivers yesterday. I thought of you.
Yeah, his RAS is off the charts. I think he was like 14th ever in RAS. All right. Now, my guy that I want to talk about, you kind of have to look at Rashee Rice too. He's the other guy that got in trouble for some pretty bad behavior, and that's Jordan Addison. Now, before that happened, a lot of people have been talking about Jordan Addison and the fact that he's not really as good as we think he is. On top of the fact that you have Justin Jefferson coming back, there are going to be some potential for more targets with Hawkinson missing, but Justin Jefferson is back. But But then you have to look at the quarterback play. And Kirk Cousins is gone. He's not in Minnesota anymore. We're looking at either JJ McCarthy, who I like, or Sam Darnold, who I believe in his potential for a final breakout in his career. But the numbers don't bear out. Sam Darnold is not a very accurate passer, and he throws about as many interceptions as he does touchdowns, and that's not a good sign for Jordan Addison. So on top of the fact that let me add one more thing. Minnesota has come out publicly and expressed more disappointment towards Jordan Addison than Kansas City has with Rashee Rice. I haven't really heard anything publicly about Rashee Rice and Kansas City denigrating him or anything like that. But with Jordan Addison, they made it very clear. We are very disappointed in him. This is not. So maybe he's kind of, ruined his reputation within the organization a little bit, and they might be a little bit more willing to kind of move off of him, and then he's going to face a suspension and everything. So if it came down to it, if I'm in a startup draft, I'm looking at completely avoiding Jordan Addison. I might, if Rashee Rice falls a little bit, they're both dealing with suspensions, but I like Rashee Rice's situation a little bit more just because they're going to win. It's Kansas City. It's a dynasty. Patrick Mahomes he's the QB1, whether that's in fantasy or not. And Rashee Rice has all the upside in the world. So I would much rather look to him than Addison at this point.
I think that's the difference. The fact that Jordan Addison, I'm always, fantasy football players, they like to play the moral game a little bit, and that's fine. If you don't have, if somebody has done a player committed a crime and you just don't want them on your roster, that is perfectly fine. However, I think we would be a little remiss to say that that player is going to not outperform his ADP expectations. So I tend to think that the fantasy football overvalues that stuff a little bit. If the player's talented, the NFL is probably going to let him play unless it was something really horrendous. So, but the difference between Jordan Addison is I just don't like you said, either Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy leading the way. TJ Hawkinson, when he starts working back in, there's just not going to be a lot of daylight for Jordan Addison. So I think the value could dip even lower. So he's not somebody I'm targeting at the moment either.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm a Raider fan, so I got to watch the whole Henry Ruggs saga, and it doesn't help anybody. And the worst part about that is that somebody died, and that's the difference.
That's
the only difference.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about some market trends. When we're looking at the market, we kind of there's a lot of analytics that we can look to, but there's also topics and trends that we can kind of look to, narratives, if you will. So we're going to talk about 4 players and what's going on with them. We got, let's get some discussion going. So let's get here. Don't reveal them all. Okay, who do you have first?
I picked this player because his market trend kind of looks like a heartbeat on Player Profiler. He's been going up and down a little bit this whole offseason, not some gigantic swings, but some minor swings. That is James Cook. I've always been a big fan of James Cook. He was hyper efficient in his first 2 years. But it's always I feel like the fantasy community is always hot and cold. He has his truthers, he has his detractors, and any given week, somebody feels like they're going to be winning the argument. However, I do think he had 2 rushing touchdowns apiece these last 2 years. The offense is clearing his way a little bit. There isn't significant competition at the running back spot, I don't believe, for James Cook this season. I think he reminds me a lot of Austin Eckler, except, of course, he doesn't have the chiseled abs and muscles that Austin Eckler had, but somebody who could be hyper efficient, very good in a slightly smaller role. I think James Cook is going to catch a lot of passes this season. Josh Allen getting a little bit older. Maybe he's not powering in every goal line touchdown this year. And another reason I always like to highlight these running backs on the dynasty market trends is a little bit of the nuance of it, because I love trading for James. There's a disconnect between, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a disconnect right now between James Cook's dynasty ADP, which is hovering at like 40.1, I believe, and his trade market value. You cannot get anywhere close. I mean, the players around him, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers, and ADP, they're try to offer one of those players, or try to offer James Cook and get one of those players in your dynasty league. That's never gonna.
Right.
I always drive home the point. Avoid your running backs in startup drafts when you are doing a startup drafts, and make a trade for him. I think you can get James Cook on the trade market for, if you are a contending team, you have one of those last 3 or 4 picks you think locked in next year, trade him for a late first. I think you get him for somebody like a Lad McConkey or a Brian Thomas. I'd be willing to do that as well, because I still think RB1 is within James Cook's range of outcomes this year.
We'll talk about Lad in a little bit. The only thing about James Cook is that he was coming into the league, his draft profile was as a small back. We all knew that he was going to be a receiving threat. That was his role at Georgia. The problem was his size, and so he slunked down rookie draft boards a little bit. But then he's basically outplayed being a late second, early third as a rookie draft pick. He's definitely warranted kind of an early second, late first, just because of his performance on the field. And if you look at that wide receiver situation in Buffalo, he does stand a chance to earn a few more targets this year. He's very skilled as a receiver. And Keon Coleman, I mean, he's got to do a lot to step up. There's none of the coach speak coming out right now that makes me feel very confident that Keon Coleman is not the next Jalen Reagor. It might take him 3 or 4 years to kind of hit his stride in the NFL. So basically, you're looking at Curtis Samuel and the 2 tight ends. There's going to be a lot of checkdowns, it looks like, and James Cook will definitely be the beneficiary of that. And I'm not huge on Isaiah Davis, I guess, So my interest in Cook has increased every single year since he's been in the league.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I targeted him in late firsts with like a 111, 112, 2-1 range in my rookie drafts. People laughed at me. And we're already getting Bradley Stalder's checking in. Keon Coleman equals Jalen Reagor. You know what? My goodness, Player Profiler I know is right. When Player Profiler gets on somebody, man, it's the whole team gets on it. You know what I mean? Last year it was Quentin Johnston was the hate, and everybody was right. So we'll see if everybody's right on Keon Coleman. I tend to think probably it's a little. I think Keon Coleman has a little more hope than the Player Profiler. The bigz at Player Profiler say he does, but we'll see. We'll see.
I got another guy later on the show that he'd make the least favorite list at Player Profiler.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to talk real quick about Bijan. And you might wonder, like, how in the world there could be like a market change for Bijan. And I'll tell you, he's starting to be talked about a lot as potential RB1. I don't see it. I have him firmly slotted in as RB3. It's going to take something like Christian McCaffrey falling off a cliff and Breece Hall not living up to his potential for Bijan to get the kind of run, the kind of touches that he needs.
Are you talking redraft really quick? Or are you talking dynasty RB3 or redraft RB3?
No, I'm talking about in a dynasty startup. I would have him behind Breece Hall.
And Christian McCaffrey?
No, not Christian.
Oh, okay, McCaffrey. Okay, all right. Just double check it.
Breece Hall is going to have the volume that Bijan Robinson doesn't have, and he's also shown a lot of open field skill. They both turn little into a lot, but I think Breece Hall is going to have more of an opportunity to do that. But if you've got your ear to the ground and you are a Bijan Robinson owner, if he's looking like the RB1, that can bring you back a whole lot of value. So that's why I'm checking the trend with Bijan Robinson. He was huge as a rookie last year, but he was still he wasn't exactly looked at as the guy, and now he's starting to be talked about as the guy.
I I I'm not too far off. I have Brees Hall as my RB1 in 2024. The difference is that I want the running back who doesn't have the ACL injury on his career. So I have Bijan Robinson just ahead of in Dynasty, but it's very tight. It's very close.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point, and that comes down as player value when you're looking to kind of, if you have Bijan and you want to move out of him, that might be bringing you a little bit more value than Brees Hall can. All right, who's your next guy?
My next guy I have up was another guy I was a huge fan of last year, but he didn't. Kind of fell in the middle of expectations, I'll say. That is Kenneth Walker. He's, and this is another player. I'll start off with saying there is no connection to reality on his ADP versus his trade value. He is the RB12 and a third round pick in Dynasty leagues. I mean, there's no trade market for Kenneth Walker. You could not trade Kenneth Walker for any first round pick right now in most Dynasty leagues. There's probably some there who would pay that, but I mean, it's just shocking to me considering where he's getting drafted and then his trade value. Now maybe it's because I'm in leagues where the Dynasty leagues have tended to be going for 4 or 5 years. You know what I mean? So a lot of vets in my Dynasty leagues. I actually rarely do. During COVID, it was just, there was nothing to do. So I joined like 20 leagues and then I just haven't quit any of them. So it's been a while since I've done any startup drafts, but I think he's a great back. It's just where's his ceiling with 20 or 30 targets? Makes it impossible for me to draft him in a Dynasty startup draft, considering these risks. You have Zach Charbonnet there, but I'm offering, anywhere I can, I'd be offering, especially if I'm a contending team, a second round pick plus, second and a third, a second, somewhere in that wide receiver 45 to 55 range, a nice sleeper, maybe a Dontavian Wicks, a Romeo Doubs, it's just a wide receiver with some talent, second round pick. Those are the type of trades I'm making for Kenneth Walker right now.
Absolutely. And I mean, the new regime in Seattle is going to do a lot to take away some production from Kenneth Walker. I think just basically you look at Pete Carroll, and he's an old school guy, and he's got a run first mentality. Jackson Smith-Njigba is coming, you guys. He's coming, and DK Metcalf is an absolute stud, and they're not going to need to rely on the run. And Zach Charbonnet scares a lot of people off, and with good reason. It's similar to Bijan with Tyler Algier. And it's also similar to the market for Travis Etienne last year. When Tank Bigsby came in, a lot of people got real scared of the value of Travis Etienne. He's way too high. Bigsby's going to vulture a bunch of touchdowns and take away. Didn't happen. Tyler Algier is not really going to take anything away from Bijan Robinson. He's good, and he could probably handle a backfield by himself on another team, but the Falcons don't need that to happen. Same with Kenneth Walker. Charbonnet's okay. He could be RB1 somewhere else, but they don't really need that. So that's also the problem with a new regime. We have to kind of see what that Seattle scheme is going to look like before we can really make any definitive decisions on what's happening with Kenneth Walker. All right, this turned into RB market trends. Even though when I asked what you wanted to talk about, it was just market trends in general. But we got RBs on the mind. I'm going to talk a little bit about Ramondre Stevenson. So everybody knows Ramondre Stevenson had a really good year a couple years ago. Played hurt last year. He also had Ezekiel Elliott in the building. Neither of those two things were very good. But his value is pretty affordable at this point, especially in startups. He's absolutely a smash. Ramondre Stevenson is going to have a huge year, and the reason why is because of positive regression. He played at an efficiency level last year that was below his career average, so he's going to return to his career average, which just means more production than he had before. So I'm grabbing him everywhere that I can. I have him in the fishbowl. I have him in the battle of the sexes. I've been making trades for him in Dynasty League. I've been doing everything I can to get Ramondre Stevenson at his value right now because it's suppressed, and I absolutely love it.
I just don't know if I can get on. I just can't get on board with Ramondre Stevenson. And it's not to do, it's just the offense. You know what I mean? Really, a bad offense can really just it affects running backs more than anybody else. And I was looking it up because I don't really trust myself with offensive line evaluations. PFF has New England as the 28th ranked offensive line for this upcoming season. So
that's not good.
Of course, you know what I mean? There's room for improvement. There's surprises. Things can happen, but it's not great. Jacoby Brissett's going to be leading the way. I think this team is going to be in contention once again for the number 1 overall pick, and they're going to be one of the top 5 worst teams in the league. There's just not going to be a lot of points. Now, of course, if he gets focused on, if he gets a lot, the difference is he going to get the targets? And I just think it's hard to say at this point. Jacoby Brissett, Drake May. There's a few more offensive weapons on the New England Patriots right now. So it'll come down to the targets, and I just am not confident enough that he's going to get him to be really on. He's cheap. You know what I mean? I don't mind taking a late dart throw on him. If you can get him for a contending second-round pick, absolutely. I'm on board to do that. But he's not someone I'm running to get because I just don't see a difference-making season coming from him.
Well, Jamie is on my side. Stevenson offensive line was horrible 2 years ago, and he was RB10. No, one of the things, Alex Van Pelt, former offensive coordinator in Cleveland, is now in New England. That's a run-first offense. We are going to rely on Nick Chubb until the wheels fall off. We're going to sub in Jerome Ford and give him rosterable carries if Chubb isn't playing. They had Kareem Hunt. Alex Van Pelt is a running offensive coordinator. Now he's got Ramondre, and I couldn't tell you another running back in New England right now. There's just not one coming to my head. So he doesn't have any competition, and he's in a run first offense. And granted, this is noise versus signal. This is, like the beat reporters have to throw their stuff out there, but the way that Drake May has looked in the preseason so far, what is it, like a day? I think he's going to win the job out of camp. I'm just saying.
That's hot. That's hot.
Certified.
Like it.
Hot take.
We'll see. I think he's gonna have to get home with the touchdowns or the targets, and I'm a little iffy on both. We'll see.
Thank you.
Antonio Gibson, yeah, Antonio Gibson. See, now right there you go. That's actually we forgot about Antonio Gibson.
Did you know Antonio Gibson used to be a wide receiver? Antonio
Gibson is a pretty big threat, actually. I wasn't ready to talk about him, but Antonio Gibson is somebody who absolutely could be getting those targets that Ramondre Stevenson got a couple years ago. And we saw that role kind of quickly fade away a couple years ago when he did have that season. It faded away a little bit toward the end of the season. So I'm a little nervous for him. We'll see. I'd like Antonio Gibson as a sleeper pick better than I probably like Ramondre Stevenson.
Well, then it's a perfect time to buy Ramondre. All right. All right. Let's talk about some strayed strategies. So I have here in the show notes discussion of how you like to trade, if you use trade calculators, things like that. But at the top of the show, I remembered, because you reminded me, that some home leagues are getting ready to get cracking. Friend of player profiler Chalk over at the Andropables, he wrote The Art of Dynasty, and one of those things is, especially in a startup, to just trade back, and just accumulate as much value as you possibly can in a startup. I'm going into this rookie draft, and I don't think that I want to use my both of my picks in the first three, both of my top 3 picks to trade back, but I might consider trading back with the 3. How do you look at the difference between trades and startups and trades and rookie drafts? Do you trade in your drafts? Is it something that you try and maximize?
In startups a few years ago, I think the trading back, what he said at the undroppables, I think that was the way to do it. I built some absolutely monster dynasty teams from doing that, trading out of those first round picks. But that is literally what everyone tries to do now. When you join a startup draft, especially with some savvy drafters, they're all trying to move out of those first picks, and it's just not getting what it was. Like I remember in a super flex, these are all super flex drafts. So, like the values, you get a lot of quarterbacks in the first few rounds. So the values extended down a little bit, but I would get a second, I would have a top 5, 6 pick. I could get a second, a third, and like a fifth. And you were like, you have 2 extra starters now. Cause you traded back. So that's one of the picks, but you have 2 extra strong starters now. And that was, it was to the races after that. I've really created some monster dynasty teams doing that. I don't think it's quite as practical now. The trades that I see going down now, actually, I look back and, I'm trying to think of some examples like some Kenny Golladay and Brandon Cooks, guys like a few years ago that were just going in the 3rd or 4th round. You got a couple of those guys and you traded away Josh Allen in the super flex league. So I tend to don't think that there's an advantage to that as it used to be, but it just depends on who is in your league. Rookie drafts, I don't think that's a good idea. Every rookie draft is so top heavy. I think unless you have a really good deal, of course, that can always happen, but it would take a special circumstance for me to want to move off of at least one of the top 5 picks this year, because it's just, if you trade the 1-5, the 1-5 is worth the 1-7 and the 1-8, you need 2 picks. There's just such a stark drop off after the top tier talent. That's not something I typically do.
What about trading up? So if I have 4 picks in the 2nd round, what if I try and move a couple of those and jump up into the back end of the first?
That's a good idea, because when you start looking at 2nd round picks in dynasty leagues, it's we're playing the lottery game here. Everybody has a lot of talent. It's not like their window is going to close right away. People are still going to think that they can do something. But when you look back at their career, it's just like, oh, he never really did anything, did he? So I'm always trying to, how can I turn 2 2nd round picks into the 1-8 or the 1-9, whether, even if those picks are the 2-3 and the 2-5, I'm always looking to move up. Now there's always tiers, you always kind of want to play the tier game. You want to either move up into the next tier, or you want to move back. You don't want to move up just a couple picks to get a very similar player. You don't want to do that. So that's
so on the topic of startups and trades and chalk and the undroppables, being an undroppables contributor, my partner here over there on the undroppables and on Bradley Stalder's Fantasy Football Plus, and at Player Profiler, host of Wednesday night Player Profiler Live, Mike Lindbergh, he and I ran a team together in the Undroppables League, and we had our startup draft, and Chalk was in there, and Jax Falcone was in there, and a whole bunch of really sharp dudes. And all of a sudden, the trades just started hitting, boom, boom, trade accepted, trade accepted, trade accepted. So Mike and I talked about it and came to the conclusion, if that's what everybody's doing, we just stand pat and just keep grabbing people whose ADPs are falling. And we wound up not making a trade until I was camping and Mike made a trade that I couldn't tell him not to do. But that was, in the late rounds, in the late teen rounds. We do have some shade in the chat, and Jamie, trading back works, except if you waste a pick on Kyron Williams.
What does Kyron Williams do to deserve that? You know what I mean? He can't help. He can't help his talent. What did Kyron Williams do to deserve that side shot, Jamie? My goodness.
No, and when I teased earlier, somebody that that all of Player Profiler hates, Bradley
Exactly.
sussed it out too. So, speaking of trade calculators, do you use trade calculators? I over on another platform that I work for, I posted a poll whether people like using trade calculators, and actually, no, I did on Twitter. Do you like using trade calculators? What trade calculators do you look at? Do you use them to give yourself an idea? Do you use them to like copy and paste and sell your trade partner on the value of guys?
The worst thing you can do, by the way, the worst thing you can do.
How do you deal with trade calculators?
I don't like them. I don't like them. I'm not trying to throw shade at the people who build them. I just don't use them correctly. Maybe that's it. Because it should be there to give you an idea. Like, okay, just to give an idea of what another opinion essentially is what the trade calculator is. However, in my time, it's cost me far too much. Like I've looked back at trade calculator, especially like I can think of one time a few years ago, and this was the last time I ever used it. It's been a long time since I considered a trade back calculator like this is gospel, but it's been a long, long time. But even just a few years ago, I remember it was Jalen Waddle's rookie year. Michael Thomas had gotten hurt the previous season, and his value had not fallen yet. He was still considered a top asset. I remember the offer was I was trading away Michael Thomas. I would get Jalen Waddle a second and even something else. And it wasn't just a throw in. It was something even valuable there. And I plug it into the trade calculator, and the trade calculator says I should be getting more for Michael Thomas. And I was like, you know what? I think the trade calculator's right. I think I'm going to hold out. Well, I look pretty silly today for that. So that was like the last time. That was the final straw. And that's happened to me multiple times. It's just, it talks me out of a trade that I know is right. I know that's going to be beneficial to me now in turn. And I talk myself out of it using a trade calculator.
Yeah. I tend to use them to kind of, if it's a multifaceted trade, if it's one guy for a couple of draft picks, I can pretty much, figure it out. If it's straight up players, you pretty much know what kind of values you're looking at. And a lot of it comes down to player preference. But you can read the writing on the wall. If somebody's trying to trade you their older guy for your younger guy, you can figure out how to project into the future, how long this guy is going to last, what the value is going to be, and who you're acquiring, how long you're going to be able to hang on to him, whether his value is at a high or low point. You can figure those things out. There are some trade calculators out there that show you what trades have been happening. And those, I think, if you want to get an idea of what you can expect, those are good. And also if like somebody's offering you like 4 people or 4 players and a couple picks, and it's just going to turn into this huge, like roster turnover deal, I think it's good to at least look at them and run them through a couple, just to kind of get an idea. So, all right. We are going to pay some bills, and we will be back with you on the other side. We're going to spotlight a couple players each, and then after that, we'll answer some questions if any of you guys have them. So let's hear from Matt, and take it away, Matt.
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft, and someone says, "Hey, that guy's injury prone. I don't want him." And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can! Injury proneness is real! At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare two players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
Thank you, Matt. Jamie checking in. Player Profiler has a great trade analyzer and trade finder. Thank you, Jamie. We appreciate it. Shout out to the trade finder and the trade analyzer. All right, let's get to some player spotlights. I have a video for that, and no producer. Zamir White, those are just on the thumbnail. All right. First one. Well, let's do this. All right, player spotlights. Let's go ahead and get your first flag plant. Who are you all in on?
I am all in on Terry McLaurin right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. I think he is a must draft for contenders. He is sitting at the wide receiver 31 in Dynasty ADP. He is 28 years old, entering his prime, and I think this is a guy who's had a major disservice done to him his first few. My apologies to Sam Howell. I know you're a fan.
Absolutely.
I think he's been shortchanged on the quarterback situation. It's really held him back a couple of years now, and I could really see him having a strong stretch of borderline wide receiver 1 production here with Jaden Daniels. Not Jaden Daniels and Anthony Richardson, I don't think are that comparable, but when we see Anthony Richardson last season, I think it should get us excited. We saw Anthony Richardson was the perfect guy just to focus on Michael Pittman, and I'm hoping we get that. Jaden Daniels makes Terry McLaurin a focal point, unlike Sam Howell did last season, because Terry McLaurin deserves it. He's a great wide receiver, and like I said, I think we're going to see 2 or 3 borderline wide receiver 1 seasons coming up out of Terry McLaurin here, paired up with the star rookie quarterback.
That's fair, and if anybody can sling it, Jaden Daniels can sling it. I'm big on McLaurin, I'm big on Luke, and I'm big on Jahan Dotson having a better year. I'm big on Jaden Daniels. Period. All right, who's your fade?
Jaden Reed is also my fade. Hey, we forgive you, man. You're creating all these graphics. You're putting them out there in the show too. Like, you'll be a fine-tuned machine here in a couple weeks.
Let's go.
But Jaden Reed, I like the player. He kind of reminded me. It's the same thing as Rashee Rice a little bit. If Rashee Rice's ADP was still a little more inflated, Jaden Reed, not a particularly advanced route runner. A lot of the stuff comes close to the line of scrimmage. The Green Bay offense spread it out last season. Christian Watson coming back healthier this season. I think they're going to spread it out once again. Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Bo Melton, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed. They have talent at the tight end position. It's tough for me to get on board with Jaden Reed's ADP. I wasn't a huge fan of his draft profile coming out. He had an impressive rookie season. It's hard for me to see a true difference maker there. So there are players I prefer at that ADP, like a Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, somebody like that.
Sure. And I mean, you talk about the tight ends, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. There's a brawl in the fantasy community over which one of those is going to wind up as the tight end 1 in that situation. I think it's Musgrave if he can stay healthy. Some people think it's Kraft. And then on top of that, you have Josh Jacobs, who's good for 60 receptions per year if he stays healthy the whole year. And then you have a kid out of USC, Marshawn Lloyd, who was a fantastic route runner and should play in that Green Bay offense. You know that they like running with 2 running backs, and they like throwing the ball to running backs a lot. So it spreads everything out. It reminds me of some other situations that are out there where there's so many mouths to feed that it's kind of like, do you count on somebody's talent overtaking everybody else's, and who is the most talented? And it's a messy situation over there. And even though I'm a Reed shareholder, when it comes down to setting my lineups in some of my leagues, I might be leaving them on the bench in favor of some other guys that I know are going to get 8 to 12 targets, whatever. Yeah. To go back to McLaurin, we had Jamie jump in. McLaurin his best comp is Santana Moss, and Moss had his best year in his 10th year in his 30s, which is funny. So somebody talked about Jalen Reagor today, and I said, weirder things have happened. We've seen, 4th year breakouts from Devontae Adams and 5th year breakouts from Keenan Allen and Tyler.
Okay, you are being Jalen Reagor's production is nowhere near some of those guys, but
I'll give you that.
Yeah,
I'll give you that. All right, my spotlight is big bad lad.
I like it.
I'm a hashtag dads for lad dad, and I love him. So I was big on him coming out in the first place. His analytics are absolutely off the charts, and the things that he does is against zone coverage. He's one of the best route runners that we've seen. He was absolutely my wide receiver 3 in this class. Some people have him or have Odunze over him. I like his situation better than Odunze. Now, when Ladd McConkey was, there have been some detractors, some people jumping off of the Ladd train, and I want to address some of the main themes that are out there. Number one is his volume in college. It wasn't that great, but it's not how many times you get the ball, it's what you do with it when you get the ball, and his yak numbers are phenomenal. He's incredible against zone coverage, but he's not great against press, and people talk about that. Well, there's a solution. The other thing is he's just a slot receiver. So he had 70% of his snaps at Georgia lined up on the outside, and he had 6 touchdowns out of those. 30% of the time he lined up in the slot, and he had a similar number of receptions and 8 touchdowns. So he definitely catches the ball more out of the slot. He's more, if he's playing outside, he's more of a wind sprinter. But what he does when he gets the ball in the middle of the field, he avoids contact. He has one of the leading missed force tackles or manufactured force tackles per reception of any of the people coming out in this draft. And the not good against press coverage. We're talking about NFL offensive coordinator minds here. If you're Greg Roman and you think that McConkey has a problem getting off the line against press coverage, what do you do?
Oh, I thought you were going to keep going there.
Oh, it's a pop quiz, hot shot.
Pop quiz. I like it. Ladd McConkey. I like him too. I really, for me, I think there's nowhere else to go, like you said. But Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, certainly disappointing rookie year. I think Quentin Johnston could be a little undervalued. I won't say that too loudly on the Player Profiler Network, but I think Ladd McConkey is going to be similar to Rashee Rice last season. I don't know if he is the bona fide wide receiver 1 for the Chargers in the future, but he is the man in the moment right now. And I think similar to Rice last year, I think McConkey is going to develop down the stretch as the go-to guy. You're going to have some big games down the stretch, and he is certainly somebody Ladd McConkey's going behind Jaden Reed in dynasty drafts, but I would rather have the guy who has a track to be Justin Herbert's number 1 target with a lot less competition.
Yeah, we have an answer from Best Ball on Call. Put him in motion. Exactly. If he's got trouble coming off the line, which we don't know he hasn't at this point in the NFL, his numbers weren't great in college, but if that is going to be a problem, put him in motion. And his quarterback is Justin Herbert, who's one of the best arms in the entire NFL. He has the arm strength to put the ball anywhere on the field from anywhere on the field. So cross-field out routes, Ladd McConkey can absolutely get open at a huge rate, and Justin Herbert can put the ball exactly where he needs to. Another thing that I want to talk about is when Josh McDaniels was on his way to Las Vegas, everybody said, look at the Patriots. They are a run-first organization. Nobody under Josh McDaniels has been great as a running back, etc. That was the narrative. And what happened under Josh McDaniels? The first year that he was there, Josh Jacobs wound up leading the league in rushing and was like RB2. Just because Greg Roman has been in situations before where his GM has built a team that was completely run-oriented, because that's how Baltimore beats you, is with running and defense, that doesn't mean that he's not a smart enough mind to take somebody like Justin Herbert and utilize his talents, and Ladd McConkey fits right in there. I see a big year coming from Josh Palmer too. But that's not the point. Now my fade, and I think everybody saw this coming. Real quick, Jamie, Lad McConkey, real name is
It
Andrew.
does affect it.
It absolutely does. I don't want Andrew McConkey. I'm not a dad's for Andrew.
No, I don't want to. I don't want Andrew McConk. That doesn't ring the ball. He's smart to have gotten a stage name because I like Lad McConkey a lot better.
Right. All right. My fate is Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams over on Keep Trade Cut is being drafted according to the aggregates at running back 9 and 56th overall. That means he's an early 5th round pick, or middle 5th round pick. Player Profiler disagrees. We have him at running back 16, and his value is in the 7th round and falling. And I absolutely agree with that. Here's the thing about Kyron Williams. We see it all the time where a running back comes in and does okay. Damian Pierce, anybody? And Kyron Williams smashed last year. If you had him on your roster, which many people didn't, he was great. If you picked him up off the waiver wire, you were very lucky. You had a good waiver position, and it probably helped you because Kyron Williams was what, RB4? He's not going to repeat that.
No.
What happens when a running back comes in with higher draft capital than the one who's there? That one gets the ball. And at this point, Kyron Williams is not the one with the draft capital. Blake Corum is the one with the draft capital. And Blake Corum has incredible efficiency. You start watching both of them compared to each other in training camp, and the answer will become clear that Blake Corum is the leader of that backfield, on top of the fact that Kyron Williams is already dealing with injuries entering training camp. I'm not drafting him at 9. I may not even draft him at 16. I'm sure if that was, if it came down to it and there were 15 other RBs off the board and I was, looking at if I was playing 0 RB, I might take that chance in a startup draft. But I am fading Caleb Williams all the way.
Kyron Williams.
Kyron Williams. That's what I meant.
He's dead. Okay. You guys got him. Okay. It's like the Simpsons show. Like, you know what I mean? He's dead. He's dead already. You know what I mean?
I'm wearing a Star Trek shirt. He's dead, Jim. I mean,
he's dead. We got him. You know what I mean? That's another player. There's just total disconnect. He might be the RB9 in ADP currently because I think there's a lot of novices maybe driving that, but his market is nowhere near that. Jamie mentions in the chat to trade him away. The time to do that was 6 months ago. I traded away all my Kyron Williams shares in February. That was the time. I cashed him out for the 1.5. I cashed him out for. I got some really good cash outs on Kyron Williams. I definitely got some people earlier in the year, but now he's one of those things like, man, can I get Kyron Williams for a late 2nd round pick? I might consider doing that. Just even for the season, just as a 1-season rental. So it's just, I think especially for the savvy people who listen to guys like you and the rest of Player Profiler, I think that they're not even considering him anymore. So I think that'll continue to drop, and he could be a nice value eventually.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. That's the thing, though.
Value fallers,
value fallers eventually become buyable,
yep.
And that's what we're doing here. That's the stock market. You buy low, you sell high. So Kyron Williams hits his lowest point. Buy. Raises up, sell. The one league, my home league, where I tried to get Kyron 2 years ago, I couldn't. First of all, the guy doesn't trade ever. Secondly, he's a Rams fan, so he grabbed Puka in the 5th round, sniped me. Puka was my 5th round pick. He grabbed Puka the pick before I had a chance to, and he didn't even know who he was. It was just because he was on the Rams. All right. That is our show for the week, you guys. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for contributing, Jamie and Best Ball Guy and Bradley and everything. We'll be back next week. Same time, same bat channel. And yeah, anything else to say besides like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, comment down below, all that, and be back with us next week at 3:00 on Wednesday?
All that jazz. And Jamie, the #1 listener, I appreciate you. He's the best, always interactive. So we'll see you next week, Jamie. Thanks for joining us today.
What's your Twitter handle? Tell the folks.
You can follow me at Dynasty_analyst. I promise I'm going to start posting on Twitter again. I've been taking like a month hiatus, really. I've been like I said, like I was telling you off show, I've been trying to focus more on this show. I got a weekly article coming up this season for Player Profiler, so I'm getting back into it here. So I'll start posting on Twitter more as well. But that's at Dynasty_analyst.
And I'm at Big Boned FFB on Twitter. And you can catch me on Fridays, Player Profiler Live here on this channel. Go ahead and follow us at Player Profiler _NFL on Twitter. This channel that you're on, go ahead and like and subscribe. Find our archive at Player Profiler News / or playerprofiler.com/news. You can see all the stuff that we're writing and everything. And until next week, you guys enjoy all the training camp steam. It'll clear your pores.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.